I have an interesting story for you today. You can learn English with a story because all you have to do is to listen to it carefully and enjoy it while you improve your spelling, vocabulary, pronunciation, and reading skills. Listen to how the sentences are constructed and how beautifully the writer's thoughts flow from one sentence to another. At the end of the lesson, I have some multiple choice questions for you to answer. That will help you to test your comprehension skills. For those who are new here, I'm Lane from English Made Easy. I'm an English teacher, and this channel is dedicated to creating easy and interesting lessons so that you can improve your English in an enjoyable way. If you would like more lessons like this one, do subscribe. Today's story, like I said, is an enjoyable one. It is about an adventure that Mary Poppins has with the bank's children. Mary Poppins is a magical English nanny who looks after the bank's children. She teaches them valuable lessons with a magical touch. It is a famous book written by P L Travers. It was made into a Walt Disney movie, and Julie Andrews acted as Mary Poppins. Today's story, Up in the Air, is an extract from that famous book written by P L Travers. It is a very funny story, so grip the armrests of your chairs while you listen to it, or you might find yourself soaring up in the air filled with laughing gas. Up in the Air is adapted from Mary Poppins by P L Travers. Up in the Air. If you want to find Cherry Tree Lane, all you have to do is ask the policeman at the crossroads. He will point his white gloved finger and say, first to the right, to your right, second to your left, and then right again, and you're there. Good day. If you are looking for number 17, you will soon find it. It is the smallest house in Cherry Tree Lane. It looks dilapidated and needs a coat of paint. It belongs to Mr. and Mrs. Banks, who live there comfortably with their 4 children. There was also Katie Nana, their nanny, of course, but she had suddenly disappeared. That morning, a cold east wind was blowing. It was blowing through the branches of the cherry trees in the lane. The trees were swaying and bending madly in the wind and continued to do so all day long. In the afternoon, Michael and Jane Banks were sitting at the window watching the scene when suddenly they saw a shape that banged heavily against their gate. It was the shape of a woman holding her hat on with one hand and carrying a bag in the other. As soon as the shape was inside the gate, the wind seemed to haul her up into the air and fling her at the front door of their house. How funny, said Michael. Let's go and see who it is, said Jane. Presently, they saw their mother coming out of the drawing room with a visitor. She was thin, with large feet and hands, and small, peering blue eyes. You'll find that they are very nice children, Mrs. Banks was saying. They give no trouble at all. The visitor followed Mrs. Banks upstairs, but in a very unusual manner. With her bag in her hands, she slid gracefully up the banisters and arrived at the landing at the same time as Mrs. Banks. Jane and Michael had never seen such a thing before. Down, of course, they had often done it themselves, but up, never. They gazed in wonder at the strange new visitor. That's her sliding up the banister. Children, this is your new nurse, Mary Poppins. Jane, Michael, say how do you do? And these, pointing to two babies in their cots, are the twins. Mary Poppins regarded the four children searchingly. Then, after some time, she said, I'll take the position. And that is how Mary Poppins came to live at number 17 Cherry Tree Lane. And the two children, Jane and Michael, were glad at her arrival. One day, Michael and Jane were invited by Mr. Wigg, Mary Poppins' uncle, to have tea at his house. When they were on their way to Mr. Wigg's place, Michael asked Mary Poppins, why is he called Mr. Wigg? Does he wear one? He is called Mr. Wigg because that is his name, and he doesn't wear one. In fact, he is bald, said Mary Poppins. Come along, she said sternly. Once the three of them were inside the house, they went upstairs. Mary Poppins opened a door and pushed the children in front of her. The room was a large and cheerful one, with a fire burning brightly and a table in the center laid out for tea. Well, this is indeed a pleasant surprise, a voice greeted them, and Jane and Michael looked around for its owner. He was nowhere to be seen. The room seemed to be quite empty. Mary Poppins looked up at the ceiling. Jane and Michael looked up too, and to their surprise, saw a round, fat, bald man hanging in the air without holding on to anything. He appeared to be sitting on the air. Oh, Uncle Albert, it's not your birthday, is it? Said Mary Poppins. I'm afraid it is, said the fat gentleman. Mr. Wigg, for that was the name of the gentleman described above, saw that the children were so astonished at seeing him up in the air that their mouths were wide open. I'd better explain, I think, said Mr. Wigg. You see, I'm a cheerful sort of man. You'd be surprised to see how many things strike me as being funny. I can laugh at almost everything. And with that, Mr. Wigg began to shake with laughter at the thought of his own cheerfulness. Uncle Albert, said Mary Poppins, and Mr. Wigg stopped laughing. Oh, beg pardon, my dear. Where was I? Oh, yes. Well, the funny thing about me is I won't laugh if I can help it. That whenever my birthday falls on a Friday, I become so filled with laughing gas that I simply can't keep on the ground. As soon as a funny thought comes to my mind, I'm like a balloon. And until I can think of something sad or serious, I remain floating in the air. It's awkward, of course, he continued, but not unpleasant. Does this ever happen to either of you? Jane and Michael shook their heads. No, I thought not. It seems to be my own special habit. Once, after I'd been to the circus on a Friday evening, which was my birthday, I was so amused and I laughed so much that, would you believe it? I was floating up here for a whole 12 hours. I did get down finally at the stroke of midnight because the next day was Saturday and not my birthday anymore. And now here I am. Mr. Wigg looked so comic, struggling helplessly in the air like a great human bubble, that Jane and Michael, after an effort to be polite, began laughing too. They laughed and they laughed, rolling over on the floor with laughter. Their behavior shocked Mary Poppins. Suddenly, Jane felt that a curious thing was happening to her. She felt herself growing lighter and lighter, just as though she was filling up with air. It was a curious and delicious feeling, and it made her want to laugh all the more. And to Michael's astonishment, he saw Jane go soaring up and touch the ceiling. Very soon, Michael too soared up, and they were joined by Mary Poppins. I see the laughing gas must be catching. I call this really friendly to come up to me because I couldn't come down. I hope you will find the air quite comfortable to sit on. And then Jane and Michael and their host simply roared with laughter while Mary Poppins frowned. She thought it was all very silly and undignified. But Mr. Wigg soon realized that while they were up in the air, the table was still on the floor. What are we going to do? We're here and it's there. It's an awful tragedy. But it's terribly comic too, said Mr. Wigg. He appealed to Mary Poppins for help. And lo and behold, the table began to wiggle on its legs. Soon it soared up to where they all were so that they could have their tea. And when tea was over, not a single scrap of food was left behind. However, what they found difficult was to come down. They tried to think of all the sad things they possibly could, but in vain. Suddenly, raising her sonorous voice above the roars of laughter, Mary Poppins said, "It is time to go home." Equally suddenly, and with a rush, Jane and Michael and Mr. Wigg came down with a thud on the floor. The thought that they would have to go home was the first sad thought of the day, and the moment it came to their minds, the laughing gas went out of them. Sitting beside Mary Poppins in the bus, Jane and Michael were very quiet, thinking of the lovely afternoon. Presently, being very tired, they crept close to Mary Poppins and fell fast asleep. Let me see if you can answer a few questions. The first one: the policeman wore cotton gloves, white gloves, or fingerless gloves? White. The second: there were a lot of mango trees, pine trees, or cherry trees in the lane? Cherry. Third: the Banks had two children, three children, or four children? Four children. The fourth one: Uncle Albert was thin, bald, or serious? Bald. The fifth one: Mr. Wigg was Mary Poppins' friend, father, or uncle? Uncle. I hope you enjoyed that story. Did you? If you did, Do hit that like button and share this video with a friend who might also enjoy the story. Have you heard of a big, friendly giant who visits children's homes in the dead of night? Do you want to know why he visits them? Watch this video here. It's called The Big Friendly Giant and it was written by Roald Dahl. And then you will know all about him. Let's meet again in the next lesson. I will be looking forward to it. I have something interesting planned and I'm sure you will enjoy it. Until we meet again, take care.